The ballroom didn't just go silent, it snapped. Crystal chandeliers trembled in the sudden hush as the woman in the red dress shot to her feet, her chair screeching backward across polished marble. She leaned over the table, fingers stabbing the air like a dagger aimed straight at the young black woman in the pink gown. "Security, get her out," she shouted, voice cracking with rage. And then even sharper spit between her teeth. "By sunrise, you're broke." Gasps rippled through the room. Silverware froze mid-air. Dozens of tuxedos turned toward the explosion of sound eyes, narrowing, whispering, calculating. But the woman in pink, calm, regal, her posture steady as stone, didn't flinch. Not an inch. She just lifted her gaze, slow and deliberate, looking at the rage in front of her like it was something she'd already survived. The man seated between them, handsome, starched, collar face pale, looked like he'd just watched a chandelier fall. His hands hovered near the tablecloth, unsure whether to intervene or disappear. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now back to Amina Carter. Amina didn't raise her voice. She didn't defend herself. She didn't even blink, because she'd seen this moment before. Different room, different dress, different woman, dripping entitlement, but the same script. She was 16, then standing near a charity gala's dessert table, told she didn't belong near the donors. Her mother had pressed her hand and whispered, "Remember this feeling. One day it won't be you they're talking down to." That memory hovered now, quiet but sharp, as the woman in red leaned closer. "She bought that dress on credit. I guarantee it," the woman hissed to the surrounding table, loud enough for the whole ballroom to hear. "These people slip in, pretend they're part of the guest list, and we're expected to just smile." A couple nearby nodded, not because they agreed, but because agreeing felt safer than challenging a wealthy socialite mid-meltdown. Amina sat still, spine, straight shoulders, soft but unshaken. Her pearl necklace caught the chandelier light like a small defiance. She traced one fingertip along the edge of her champagne glass, steady, measured as if waiting for something unseen to arrive. Across the room, a young waiter froze mid-step, eyes widening just enough to betray recognition. He whispered to another staffer, "Carter. Her name's on the VIP list. She's one of the sponsors." But neither dared step forward, not yet. The temperature in the room didn't allow it. The woman in red slammed both palms onto the table, rattling the plates. "I said get her out. She doesn't belong at this table, she doesn't belong at my event, and she sure as hell doesn't belong next to my husband." Amina finally moved, just her eyes lifting from the table to meet the woman's fury head-on. Not angry, not shaken, just aware. Because this wasn't an accident. This was a test, and the night hadn't even begun. The chandelier glow softened against her skin as Amina Carter sat unmoving, the murmurs rising around her like steam from a boiling pot. She didn't shift in her seat. She didn't grab her bag. She didn't react the way the room expected a mistake to react. Her stillness was its own language, and the woman in red didn't know how to read it. Across the table, tuxedoed guests exchanged glances, quick and sharp, like people checking whether they were witnessing a scandal or a crime. A woman, a few seats down, leaned into her date and whispered, "Who invited her?" The words traveled farther than she intended. The man sitting between the two women swallowed, hard eyes darting from his furious companion to Amina. He wasn't cruel, just spineless, and a spineless man is often the loudest spectator to injustice. His fork trembled against the plate. He cleared his throat but said nothing. Amina adjusted the thin gold bracelet on her wrist, the only gesture revealing she was even aware of the storm building around her. No fear, no fluster. Just an elegance so controlled it unsettled the people who mistook wealth for volume. At the far side of the ballroom, security began drifting closer, not rushing, just orbiting, waiting to see which way the gravity of the moment would pull. People in tuxedos shifted their chairs. Someone raised a phone halfway, then lowered it, afraid to be the first to record. The woman in red laughed a sharp, brittle sound. "Look at her. She won't even speak." She turned to the nearest couple. "You see, that's what guilt looks like." The couple nodded, not because they believed her, but because they feared being dragged into the center of her rage. Social circles in rooms like this ran on fear disguised as agreement. Amina's eyes followed the waiter from earlier, the young one who had recognized her name, as he hovered near the champagne tower, breathing too shallowly. He kept glancing toward her, then toward the woman in red, then back again, as if silently begging the moment to pass without him. But moments like this never pass on their own. Someone has to break them. A ripple of tension passed over Amina's face, subtle as a blink. It wasn't anger. It was recognition the type earned only after surviving the same tone, the same gesture, the same accusation too many times. She remembered being 22, stepping into an exclusive fundraiser she had been invited to, and hearing a woman's voice behind her say, "Someone get housekeeping, please." She had turned around then, timid, unsure whether to correct or to retreat. She chose retreat. It took her years to forgive herself for that. Tonight would not replay that scene. Her fingers tapped her glass, once a soft, deliberate click that cut through the table better than any raised voice. The waiter saw it. His breath hitched. He took one step forward. That was all Amina needed. The confirmation that someone in this room still saw truth without being instructed. The woman in red leaned closer, voice dripping with triumph. "Say something, anything, or is silence all you have?" Amina lifted her chin. The room leaned in. Even the chandeliers felt like they dimmed, waiting. She didn't speak yet. She just looked at the woman's finger, still pointed at her face, and slowly, calmly lowered the hand with 2 fingers, a gesture, light as breath, yet heavy as verdict. Nothing about her was loud, but the shift in the room was unmistakable. Power had begun to move. The tension didn't rise, it thickened like someone had poured warm honey into the air, and every breath had to push through it. The ballroom musicians exchanged confused glances, their violins hovering mid-air as the scene in the center of the room eclipsed the music entirely. Even the waitstaff slowed their steps, orbiting the unfolding humiliation like satellites caught in gravitational pull. The woman in red sensed the room's attention sharpening and doubled down. She's pretending to be a guest. Look at her dress. Look at her posture. Do you think someone of status sits here like that? Her voice sliced through the tablecloth, through the marble, through the pretense of civility. Amina didn't move. Not a breath wasted. Not an expression cracked. Her stillness was so precise it made the accusation look messy, amateurish. And that only enraged the woman further. Security approached now, 2 men in tailored black suits, moving with that stiff caution reserved for situations involving donors. One leaned toward the woman in red, waiting for her cue. She didn't whisper. She wanted the whole ballroom to hear. "She's not on the guest list. Escort her outside. Now." The waiter, the young one with the trembling hands, froze. His jaw clenched, his knuckles whitening around the champagne bottle he carried. He whispered to himself, barely audible, "Her name's there. I saw it. I know I did." A nearby businessman smirked, swirling his wine. "Classic. These parties always attract the wrong kind." His companion nodded, eyes glued to Amina with the detached curiosity of someone inspecting a painting rather than a person. The security guard stepped forward, chest squared. "Ma'am, I'll need you to stand." Amina didn't blink. "You'll need more than volume," she murmured, quiet enough to be personal, loud enough to unsettle. He hesitated. Her tone wasn't defiant. It was decisive. The woman in red scoffed. "Don't let her threaten you. She's nobody. Just drag her out if she won't walk." The word drag shattered something in the young waiter's expression. He stepped forward instinctively, then stopped himself, trapped between courage and employment. Amina glanced toward him, not for help, just acknowledgement, and it nearly broke him. The man between the 2 women finally tried to intervene, lifting both palms. "Darling, maybe we should." "Quiet," she snapped without even looking at him. Amina tilted her head slightly, studying the man the way one studies a crack in fine glassware. A flaw, small yet telling. Her silence wasn't compliance, it was judgment. Security tried again. "Ma'am, please, don't make this more difficult." The words carried weight, the kind used to intimidate without sounding openly hostile. Amina let out a slow breath. Not fear, preparation. The ballroom lights shimmered across her features, revealing nothing but calm, the dangerous kind. The woman in red leaned in her tone, turning venomously smug. That's the face of someone who knows she's been caught. But the waiter could no longer stay still. His voice shook, but it cut through the room like a tremor beneath glass. "She's on the list," he said. "VIP section. I checked it myself." The ballroom inhaled all at once. The woman in red snapped toward him. "You don't speak unless spoken to." Her command cracked, but the sound it made wasn't power, it was fear pretending to be authority. The waiter swallowed eyes, flicking toward Amina again, almost apologetic. I just know she's not lying." Security paused. The woman in red stuttered for the first time. "Check again." He must have read it wrong. No one moved. The room had begun to turn just a few degrees, but enough that everyone felt the shift. Something invisible had realigned. And Amina, still seated, still silent, felt it click into place like the first move in a game she had already mastered. The young waiter's words didn't just land, they detonated quietly like a fuse catching flame beneath the tablecloth. 100 eyes snapped toward him, then toward Amina, then back to the woman in red who suddenly stood too still like a performer forgetting her next line. Her smile tightened. So that's the story you're going with, fine. Bring me the list. Let's settle this publicly. But no one moved. Not security. Not the staff. Not even her husband, who now studied his wine glass like it contained the answer to escaping the entire scene. Amina watched all of them, her gaze soft but unyielding the way a lighthouse watches storms it has survived before. The waiter stepped closer, voice cracking but steady enough to be brave. I saw her name highlighted. Full access. VIP. His fingers trembled against the tray he carried. You shouldn't remove her. Those words traveled farther than any accusation had. The ballroom recalibrated, conversations muted, breaths slowed. The woman in red recoiled as if slapped by something she didn't consider capable of touching her. You are staff, she spat. You don't get to contradict me. The waiter's throat tightened. He looked down. Shame, fear, responsibility all mixed at once. But he didn't step back. 2 other servers exchanged glances. One of them whispered, "He's right. I saw the name too." A ripple of discomfort spread across the room as truth. An unwelcome guest finally sat down at the table. The woman in red's voice grew shrill. You think this proves anything? These people sneak into events all the time. You're being manipulated. Amina finally shifted, not much, just enough to lift her chin. And the entire room felt it. Security, sensing the power, rebalancing, hesitated. The taller guard cleared his throat, addressing the waiter. You sure about what you saw? The waiter gulped. Yes, sir. The guard's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to contradicting donors or causing scenes, but he wasn't blind either. And Amina's calm was beginning to unsettle him far more than the socialite's fury. The woman in red tried again this time, addressing the guards directly. She's lying. I know what I saw. She isn't. Then check the system, one of the guards said quietly. Her face went rigid. Because she had checked the system earlier and she had seen something she didn't want to acknowledge. A name she recognized. A name she had chosen to ignore because acknowledging it meant admitting she had mistaken power for inconvenience. Someone near the bar whispered, "Why doesn't she want it checked?" Another added. Maybe she knows exactly who the woman is. The ballroom shifted 1 degree at a time until the weight of the crowd's attention pressed fully onto her. Amina didn't need to lean in. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was soft enough to make people lean toward her, not away. You're very confident in your assumptions. She paused, letting the words settle, letting the air stretch thin. Let's see if your confidence survives fact. The waiter took another step, a small, trembling act of rebellion, and extended a printed guest list toward security. The guard reached for it. The woman in red's breath caught audibly. For the first time, uncertainty cracked her polished veneer. A hush washed over the ballroom, slow and heavy. People weren't watching a misunderstanding anymore. They were watching something unravel. And Amina, hands folded gently in her lap, waited not for validation, not for forgiveness. The guard's fingers brushed the top of the list, and that tiny sound paper against skin felt louder than the orchestra that had gone silent 10 minutes ago. The woman in red lurched forward, snatching the air as if she could grab the moment back before it slipped out of her control. Don't you dare touch that, she hissed. Her voice cracked, not from anger, from panic leaking through the seams. Amina watched her with the kind of stillness that made the chandeliers seem restless. Every breath in the ballroom hitched. Even the staff holding trays mid-air froze like statues trapped in the wrong century. Security exchanged glances. The waiter stood firm. The list hung in the balance. And then the woman in red struck. She lunged across the table, yanking the paper from the guard's hand, crumpling it in her fist. Glasses rattled. A fork clattered. Someone gasped loud enough to echo. You don't decide who belongs, she shouted. I do, the ballroom recoiled. Her husband's face collapsed into his hands. The guard stepped back in disbelief. Several guests murmured, She's lost it. Amina didn't move. Not even her lashes twitched. But inside, in a place no one could see, something old stirred. Not rage, not shock, recognition. She'd been here before, 16 years old, wearing a borrowed dress. Waiting outside a gala, she'd been invited to, clutching a too small purse, hearing a woman say the words that branded themselves into her bones. Take her outside. She doesn't look like she belongs. She had walked away that night. Tonight she would not. The woman in red wasn't finished. She tore the list in half, once, twice, letting the shredded paper rain across the table like confetti at a funeral. There, she spat, chest heaving. No list. No proof. Now get her out. The waiter's face twisted. He stepped forward, hand-shaking voice barely steady. You can't just destroy the record. I can do whatever I want, she snapped. Then she made the mistake that snapped the room in half. She grabbed Amina's wrist. Not forcefully, but with enough entitlement to scorch the moment instantly. The ballroom erupted in a collective intake of breath. Guests surged to their feet. 3 phones lifted, recording instinctively. Security stiffened. Amina's head turned slowly, her eyes falling on the hand gripping her like a burden she did not consent to carry. The woman in red froze. She hadn't expected resistance. She'd never needed it before. Amina's voice was quiet, almost gentle. You touched me, she said. In front of witnesses. The words weren't angry. They were a verdict. The woman's grip faltered. Her husband whispered, let go. Now. But she didn't. Pride is a stubborn prison. Amina rose finally, and the entire ballroom seemed to rise with her. Her presence filled the space like a shift in weather, the kind that makes people look toward the door because they swear a storm just arrived. The woman stepped back, rattled. What are you going to do, call security? She scoffed, but her voice trembled. Amina didn't need to answer. Her phone vibrated lightly in her hand, a silent signal from her assistant. She tapped once. A clear, calm voice filled her ear. Miss Carter, Protocol Elysium is ready. 1 word from you. Amina lifted her gaze to the panicked woman before her. No, she whispered. I won't call security. She took 1 step closer. Enough to make the woman stumble backward. You've mistaken my silence for weakness. You've mistaken my patience for permission. The room held its breath. Even the chandeliers seemed to lean in. Amina's next words dropped like a blade, lowered with precision. And tonight, you're going to learn the difference. The panic didn't scream, it slithered. It crawled up the back of the woman in red as Amina stepped forward, her calm somehow louder than all the shouting that had come before. The ballroom felt smaller now, as if the walls themselves leaned in to witness what happened when someone pushed the wrong person too far. Amina lifted her phone, not high, not theatrical, just enough for the light to brush against her cheek. Activate full escalation, she said quietly. Her assistant's voice came through the line, crisp and frictionless. Yes, ma'am. Dispatching compliance officers, freezing financial channels tied to the grant, flagging all event sponsors. We're moving. A hush cut through the room like a tide pulling back from shore. The woman in red blinked. What are you talking about? What escalation? Her voice wavered with a new emotion, not anger, but the realization that something vast and invisible had begun to move. And tonight, you're going to learn the difference. Her husband's face collapsed into his hands. The guard stepped back in disbelief. Several guests murmured, She's lost it. Amina didn't move. Not even her lashes twitched. But inside, in a place no one could see, something old stirred. Not rage, not shock, recognition. She'd been here before. 16 years old, wearing a borrowed dress. Excuse me, he said, voice quivering. I've just received a system override. Sponsorship control transferred. Effective now. The woman in red spun toward him. That's impossible, we paid for. No, he murmured, eyes flicking again to the screen. Your account was frozen. Just now. Her face drained. Who would freeze Amina didn't make her wait. Carter Equity Group, she said simply. We fund the majority stake of this gala. Every year. Silence collided with the marble floor. A guest dropped his napkin. Another muttered Carter. Wait, that Carter. The waiter from earlier inhaled shakily relief and awe tangled in his expression. He wasn't imagining it. He hadn't misread the list. His moment of courage hadn't been foolish, it had been correct. The woman in red stumbled back a step, grasping for something solid. Oh God, your Amina didn't let her finish. The sponsor you insulted, she said. Their shoulders dropped. Their respect sharpened. Their eyes avoided meeting Amina's too directly the way men avoid staring at someone whose authority outranks their training. The taller guard cleared his throat and turned to the woman in red. Ma'am, we'll need you to surrender your event credentials. She blinked, confused. Your access badge, your seating band, and your sponsor-level clearance. His tone wasn't apologetic. It wasn't cold. Excuse me, he said, voice quivering. I've just received a system override. Sponsorship control transferred. Effective now. The woman in red spun toward him. That's impossible, we paid for. No, he murmured, eyes flicking again to the screen. Your account was frozen. Just now. Her face drained. What who would freeze Amina didn't make her wait. Carter Equity Group, she said simply. We fund the majority stake of this gala. Every year. The panic didn't scream, it slithered. It crawled up the back of the woman in red as Amina stepped forward, her calm somehow louder than all the shouting that had come before. The ballroom felt smaller now, as if the walls themselves leaned in to witness what happened when someone pushed the wrong person too far. Amina lifted her phone, not high, not theatrical, just enough for the light to brush against her cheek. Activate full escalation, she said quietly. The panic didn't scream, it slithered. It crawled up the back of the woman in red as Amina stepped forward, her calm somehow louder than all the shouting that had come before. The ballroom felt smaller now, as if the walls themselves leaned in to witness what happened when someone pushed the wrong person too far. Amina lifted her phone, not high, not theatrical, just enough for the light to brush against her cheek. Activate full escalation, she said quietly. Silence collided with the marble floor. A guest dropped his napkin. Another muttered, Carter. Wait, that Carter. The waiter from earlier inhaled shakily relief and awe tangled in his expression. He wasn't imagining it. He hadn't misread the list. His moment of courage hadn't been foolish, it had been correct. The woman in red stumbled back a step, grasping for something solid. Oh God, your Amina didn't let her finish. The sponsor you insulted, she said. Do you want real-time disclosure? Amina's gaze stayed on the woman in red, the one who had pointed a finger at her like a weapon, torn the guest list to shred, placed her hands where they did not belong. Yes, Amina said. Let's make it clear. The officer tapped his tablet. The ballroom projector, previously showing a slow rotation of sponsor logos, flickered, then shifted to a financial dashboard. Rows of numbers, accounts, holdings, one name highlighted in red. Silence collided with the marble floor. A guest dropped his napkin. Another muttered, Carter. Wait, that Carter. The waiter from earlier inhaled shakily relief and awe tangled in his expression. He wasn't imagining it. He hadn't misread the list. His moment of courage hadn't been foolish, it had been correct. The woman in red stumbled back a step, grasping for something solid. Oh God, your Amina didn't let her finish. The sponsor you insulted, she said. Amina's voice cut clean through the silence, not loud but devastating in its precision. You accused me of trying to sneak into an event my company funds. You threatened to have me dragged out. You tore documents. You laid hands on me. A beat. You built an entire story around your assumptions. And now you're standing inside the consequences. The woman in red clutched her husband's arm. You knew she was someone, she whispered. Why didn't you say anything? His answer was barely audible. I didn't know she was this someone. Amina turned to the waiter, the first witness, the one who risked his job for truth. You, she said softly, stepped forward when it mattered. He swallowed, eyes wet but steady. I couldn't watch it happen again. Amina nodded, once a small gesture, but it struck deeper than applause. Your integrity is noted, she said. Stay close. I'll speak with you when this is over. The woman in red snapped. You're rewarding him for embarrassing me, for undermining me. Amina's eyes sharpened. No. I'm acknowledging that he behaved with more dignity tonight than you did with all your wealth combined. A hush fell, heavy, crushing. Then came the moment, the one the entire ballroom would talk about for years, the one recorded from 12 different angles, the one that became the screenshot, the soundbite, the legend. Amina stepped into full view of everyone, the lights catching her gown, her posture, the collected fury wrapped in serenity. You called me a fraud, she said, her voice a blade drawn slow. At a gala my money built. The drop was seismic. Phones trembled. A woman near the bar whispered, God. She did not just say that. But she had. And the ballroom, stunned, breathless, electrified, understood that the reveal was complete. The shock didn't fade, it multiplied. It rippled across the ballroom in slow, widening circles as every guest processed the meaning of Amina's words. The chandeliers seemed brighter, the marble colder, the air thinner. People straightened their posture without realizing it. Power demands attention, and Amina had just shifted the axis of the evening. The woman in red staggered back as if the floor tilted beneath her. You can't speak to me like that. You can't. Amina didn't move. Their shoulders dropped, their respect sharpened. Their eyes avoided meeting Amina's too directly the way men avoid staring at someone whose authority outranks their training. The taller guard cleared his throat and turned to the woman in red. Ma'am, we'll need you to surrender your event credentials. She blinked, confused. Your access badge, your seating band, and your sponsor-level clearance. His tone wasn't apologetic. It wasn't cold. Their shoulders dropped. Their respect sharpened. Their eyes avoided meeting Amina's too directly the way men avoid staring at someone whose authority outranks their training. The taller guard cleared his throat and turned to the woman in red. "Ma'am, we'll need you to surrender your event credentials." She blinked, confused. Your access badge, your seating band, and your sponsor-level clearance. His tone wasn't apologetic. It wasn't cold. It was the tone of someone delivering the unavoidable. The ballroom reacted instantly, whispers rising like a storm wind. "She's being stripped. This is real." She messed with the wrong person. The woman in red shook her head, backing away. "No, I'm a donor, a top donor. You can't just—" Amina raised one hand. The room fell silent. "Your contributions were conditional," she said. "Conditional on conduct, compliance, and ethical participation. You violated all three." "Why didn't you say anything?" His answer was barely audible. "I didn't know she was this someone." Amina turned to the waiter, the first witness, the one who risked his job for truth. "You," she said softly, stepped forward when it mattered. He swallowed, eyes wet but steady. I couldn't watch it happen again." Amina nodded, once a small gesture, but it struck deeper than applause. "Your integrity is noted," she said. "Stay close. I'll speak with you when this is over." "Why didn't you say anything?" His answer was barely audible. "I didn't know she was this someone." Amina turned to the waiter, the first witness, the one who risked his job for truth. "You," she said softly, stepped forward when it mattered. He swallowed, eyes wet but steady. I couldn't watch it happen again." Amina nodded, once a small gesture, but it struck deeper than applause. "Your integrity is noted," she said. "Stay close. I'll speak with you when this is over." The woman in red let out a sound halfway between a gasp and a sob. "You mean, we've been carried," Amina finished, "by the very woman you tried to remove." Guests murmured, some in shock, some in awe, some in vindicated satisfaction. One whispered loudly, "She didn't just lose her status. She never had it." Security stepped behind the woman in red, not grabbing, not pushing, simply waiting for the command. Amina gave it with a single nod. "Escort them out." "Oh." Her husband tried to salvage dignity, adjusting his jacket and offering his arm. The woman in red refused at first, trembling with pride, but then her knees buckled. She clung to him, defeated, as security guided them toward the ballroom doors. Phones recorded. Eyes followed, reputation shattered, and Amina watched, not vindictive, not gloating but resolute, a judge delivering sentence without raising her voice. The shock didn't fade, it multiplied. It rippled across the ballroom in slow, widening circles as every guest processed the meaning of Amina's words. The chandeliers seemed brighter, the marble colder, the air thinner. People straightened their posture without realizing it. Power demands attention, and Amina had just shifted the axis of the evening. The woman in red staggered back as if the floor tilted beneath her. You can't speak to me like that. You can't." Amina didn't move. The doors shut with a cushioned thud, soft but final, the kind of sound that told the entire ballroom a chapter had closed. A strange quiet washed over the room, not awkward, not tense, but reverent. People who had spent years pretending to be unshakable now stood very still, unsure whether to look at the exit or at the woman who had just rewritten the hierarchy of the night. Amina remained standing, her posture a calm horizon after a storm. Her gown shimmered beneath the chandelier, light not louder, not brighter, just undeniably present. Her silence drew eyes the way gravity draws tides. The event director approached, shoulders slightly bowed, hands clasped in front of him. "Miss Carter, I want to apologize on behalf of the entire team. We had no idea." Amina lifted a hand. "Intent doesn't erase impact," she said quietly. "Tonight revealed what's been growing here for years. You didn't create it, but you didn't stop it either." He swallowed, humbled. "No, ma'am, we didn't." Behind him, guests shuffled, forming a loose semicircle around Amina, not crowding, but gravitating. Whispered apologies drifted in like scattered petals. "I never supported what she did. I'm so sorry you were treated like that." She was out of line, words meant to soothe, but they only revealed guilt, long ignored. Amina didn't scold them. She didn't absolve them either. Her gaze moved to the young waiter, the first person in the room brave enough to contradict the narrative. He stood where he had earlier, hands trembling around an empty tray, eyes wide with confusion at the sudden shift in his world. Amina approached him slowly, not towering over him, not descending to him, simply meeting him where he stood. "What's your name?" she asked. "Jonas," he whispered. "Jonas Hale." Amina nodded thoughtfully. "You were the only one who acted when it mattered. Courage isn't loud, Jonas. It's timely." His throat tightened. I didn't want anything bad to happen. I just wanted to tell the truth." "And you did," she said. "That's what leadership looks like at the beginning." Several guests exchanged glances, some touched, some envious, all attentive. A nearby staff manager stepped forward nervously. "Miss Carter, Jonas is one of our newest hires, still in training. Tonight Amina stopped her with a look so soft yet so absolute it rewrote the woman's sentence mid-air. "Tonight he upheld integrity when the room abandoned it." Jonas blinked fast, trying not to cry. Amina continued, "After this event, I want you to meet my HR director. There's potential in you that shouldn't be wasted." A few gasps. Someone whispered, "She's promoting him? On the spot?" Amina wasn't finished. She turned to the musicians, still frozen with their violins half raised. "Please," she said, "play." The lead violinist nodded quickly, relieved. The bow touched string, releasing a soft, trembling note that slowly unfurled into a melody. Music dripped back into the room, washing tension from corners where it had clung like dust. Guests began to breathe again, shoulders lowered, glasses lifted, but the center of the ballroom had permanently shifted. The atmosphere had changed not with fear, but with clarity. Amina stepped back into the light, offering the room one final truth. "I didn't raise my voice tonight," she said, "not because I was powerless, but because justice doesn't need to shout to be heard." The statement carved itself into the space, poised, sharp, unforgettable. The music swelled, the crowd exhaled, and the night, what remained of it, reshaped itself around the calm, immovable presence of Amina Carter, the woman who didn't come to claim a seat at the table. She came to raise the standard for everyone sitting at it. The ballroom's energy didn't return to normal, it evolved. What had begun as a glittering charity gala now felt like a room that had collectively awakened from a long, comfortable sleep. People straightened their jackets, adjusted their jewelry, chose their words more carefully, because now they understood something fundamental. The most powerful person in the room had been the one they dismissed. Amina stepped away from Jonas and returned to her table, not reclaiming a seat but claiming the space. Her chair waited, elegant and untouched, as if refusing to belong to anyone else. Guests watched her every movement, not with fear, but with respect, sharpened by realization. A wine steward rushed forward. "Miss Carter, may I refresh your glass?" Amina shook her head gently. "Not yet. Let the room settle." Her voice carried, soft but precise, and the musicians modulated their melody accordingly, calmer strings, warmer tempo. Even the lighting technician, unsure if he should adjust the chandeliers, simply froze and let the light fall where it naturally wanted to, on her. Across the room, the event director gathered the remaining staff in a small huddle. Their hushed voices carried. "We have to adjust the flow." She changed the power structure. How do we proceed?" Amina heard everything, the whispers, the uncertainty, the questions trapped between protocol and reverence. She didn't turn their way. Instead, she waited. Leadership isn't only commanding. Sometimes it's offering the world a chance to reorient itself. The husband of the woman in red reappeared inside the doorway, lingering with embarrassment etched painfully across his face. Security stopped him, but he raised a hand. "I'm not here to cause trouble." His eyes found Amina across the room. "I want to apologize." The room stiffened. Even the violins wavered for a moment. Amina didn't look away. "Your apology is noted," she said, "but it wasn't your hand on my wrist." He nodded, shame reddening his cheeks. "I know, but I stood next to someone doing harm and stayed quiet. That's the same thing." The honesty surprised several guests. Amina considered him for a long moment. "Silence is consent," she said, "but recognition is a beginning." He bowed his head and left, escorted gently rather than forced. His exit, quieter than before, carried a different kind of humility, one Amina rarely saw in rooms built on ego. The crowd exhaled softly. Amina turned toward the event director. "Reopen the program," she said. "Tonight isn't ruined, it's corrected." He nodded rapidly. "Yes, Miss Carter." Immediately. Staff scattered like birds released from a cage, moving with revived purpose. The musicians straightened, transitioning into a brighter piece. Servers resumed circulation. The night breathed again. But the shift remained unmistakable, irreversible. A group of young professionals approached her carefully, each step measured and humble. "Miss Carter," one of them said, voice trembling with admiration, "we've never seen anything like what you did." Amina offered a small, steady smile. "What I did wasn't extraordinary. What happened shouldn't be extraordinary." Another added, "It's just, you stayed so calm. Most people weren't taught to survive rooms like this," she replied. Her words landed, heavy, honest, necessary. The young professionals nodded, absorbing each syllable like lesson and warning intertwined. Then, with a gesture so subtle it nearly dissolved into the air, Amina lifted her glass not for a toast, but for a statement carried inside silence. She didn't clink it. She didn't raise it high. She simply held it just above the table, acknowledging the moment. "We continue," she said softly. And the room, chastened yet uplifted, continued with her. The ballroom moved with a steadier rhythm now, but beneath the polished surface a new current pulsed, the kind that lingers after truth has rearranged the room. Conversations resumed in cautious murmurs, yet every voice carried a different weight. Every glance toward Amina held something closer to reverence than curiosity. She walked toward the balcony doors, drawn by a need for breath that wasn't shared with 100 stunned onlookers. The velvet curtains parted like they knew her touch. Cool night air rolled in, brushing against her skin, lifting the edge of her pink gown. Behind her, the world she'd just reshaped kept unfolding. Jonas, the young waiter, stood with his tray lowered to his side. Colleagues patted his back, some proud, some surprised, some clearly wondering what doors might open now. The event director was speaking urgently into his earpiece, recalibrating the entire schedule around an unplanned shift in power. But Amina, out on the balcony, let the noise fade behind her. City lights flickered below, hundreds of windows glowing like distant witnesses. She inhaled slowly, feeling the knot of memory loosen in her chest. The echoes of past humiliations, Charlotte at 16, Los Angeles at 22, the fundraiser at 25, rose like ghosts around her and dissolved into the night air. She had carried them long enough. Tonight, she had dismantled one of them in real time. A soft step approached from behind. Jonas appeared in the doorway, hesitant. "Miss Carter, I didn't mean to bother you." "You're not bothering me," Amina said, turning slightly. "You showed courage tonight." He swallowed hard. "I didn't know if it was enough." She stepped closer, her expression gentler now, the storm inside her settling into something steady and warm. "Courage isn't about doing everything," she said. "It's about doing the right thing at the exact moment everyone else decides not to." Jonas looked down, overwhelmed. No one's ever said something like that to me." Amina studied him a moment, the nervous breath, the earnest eyes, the way his shoulders carried exhaustion from a life lived on the edge of being overlooked. "You remind me of myself," she said. His head snapped up. "In the years when no one believed I had anything to offer, before the titles, before the money, before the world saw what I was building." She paused. "Do you know what changed everything?" Jonas shook his head. "One moment," she said. "One room. One person deciding to underestimate me too loudly. That's when I stopped waiting for permission." The weight of her words settled over him like a mantle being placed on shoulders that had never known one. From inside the ballroom, a swell of applause drifted out, spontaneous, uneven, but unmistakably for her. Someone had taken the mic, likely to resume the evening's program, but the applause kept rolling in waves, as if the entire room needed to release everything it had held in. Jonas glanced back, eyes wide. "They're clapping for you." Amina smiled faintly. "No, they're clapping because they witnessed clarity. It just happened to arrive wearing my face." "Oh." Thunderous clapping continued, a mix of admiration, relief, and something deeper. The realization that silence no longer served them, or anyone else. Amina turned toward the ballroom again. "I should go back," she said. Jonas nodded, stepping aside. She walked in with the quiet confidence of someone who had mastered the architecture of rooms like this, the soft carpet absorbing each step, the chandeliers reflecting her silhouette. The applause rose again when people saw her. Not chaotic, not forced. A collective acknowledgement. A woman near the front whispered to her friend. She didn't yell once, and her friend whispered back, "That's why it worked." Amina returned to center, allowing the crowd to settle. Then, With a poise that drew the room still again, she prepared to speak, not to correct, not to punish, but to define what came next. Because power wasn't the story of the night. Character was, and the room was finally ready to hear it. The applause softened into a reverent hush as Amina stepped back into the center of the ballroom. The lights, as if guided by instinct rather than a technician, drew toward her, not spotlighting, just aligning. People eased closer, not crowding, but forming a quiet orbit around someone they now understood differently. She didn't climb the stage. She didn't reach for the microphone. She simply stood where the confrontation had unfolded, the very ground where a false hierarchy had cracked open. And the room waited. Amina let the silence settle, thick and patient, until even the clinking of melting ice in cocktail glasses seemed to fade. When she finally spoke, her voice carried not through volume, but through calm resonance. "Tonight," she said, "you all saw something uncomfortable. Guests shifted. Ice fell. Some lifted phones reluctantly, wanting to record without intruding. You saw what happens when assumptions go unchecked, when one voice, loud and entitled, tries to dictate who deserves space." Her gaze swept the ballroom, not accusing, but honest. "And you saw how quickly a room full of educated, polished people can fall quiet when wrongness walks in wearing confidence." A murmur rippled through the crowd, small but unmistakably self-conscious. "But you also saw something else," Amina continued, her tone softening. "You saw courage. You saw integrity. You saw what happens when someone refuses to bow to the weight of another person's prejudice." Her eyes found Jonas in the corner. He lowered his head, overwhelmed. "And you saw what happens," she said, "when power doesn't need to shout." The line landed with the gravity of a closing argument. The violins quieted again, letting her words breathe. "In rooms like this, people are often taught to measure worth by noise, by money flaunted, by status asserted, by the volume of one's confidence. But worth," she placed a hand lightly over her heart, "is measured by conduct, not costume, not color, not assumptions." A few guests nodded. Others exhaled shakily. "I didn't ask for what happened tonight," Amina said. "But I won't pretend it was new. I won't pretend this was the first time or the last time someone will look at a black woman and see less than what stands before them." The weight of truth cut through the room with surgical clarity. "But I will tell you this." Her voice deepened, not louder but anchored. "I will never shrink so someone else's prejudice can fit comfortably inside a room." A man near the front wiped at his eyes discreetly. A woman gripped her clutch harder, nodding with a fierceness she tried to hide. Amina straightened her shoulders, not as a performance, but as a statement. "When I sat here tonight, I came as a guest," she said. "When I stood as myself." A pause. "And when I spoke for anyone who has ever been told they didn't belong in a place they helped build." Her final words cut through the air like a steady blade. "I didn't raise my voice tonight. I raised the standard." The hush that followed wasn't silence, it was awe. Slowly, as if synchronized by an unseen conductor, the entire ballroom began to applaud. Not the frantic clapping from earlier, this was deeper, heavier, almost ceremonial. A standing ovation rose around her like a tide. Amina didn't bow. She didn't soak it in. She simply accepted it with the quiet grace of someone who had nothing left to prove. Because tonight wasn't about dominance. It was about dignity. And dignity, once revealed, has a way of reshaping every room it enters.